Well, you know what we talk about, so you'll hear it again, because and it's just a hearing, not a good hearing or bad hearing, but it's hearing that's happening. And non-duality, meaning that to try to describe it by saying it's one without a second, that's not two. One without a second, not one without the other. So there is nothing other than that. One. I am that. That's the Mahavakya, the great mantra. You are that. Everything is that one. But if we hadn't learnt words, how would we be able to describe it? So we've acquired words and taken the word to be the real and put the words we've learned into this believed entity or person coming from persona, the mask. And you know what a mask is. You cover your face with the mask, you've got a false pattern that's appearing. So the mask is made up of concepts. But when they say it's non-conceptual, ever fresh, presence awareness, they're describing or trying to describe the indescribable. Because that description can never be the described. The map can never be the territory. The word can never be the real. So we're using words, ideas, images, concepts to try and explain it. How can you explain the unexplainable? You can't. But there's the knowing. Anybody who is not knowing right now, or awareing, if you like to put that term on, anyone who's unaware. You ever look at that and say, no, you can't say, oh, I'm not aware. Because if I wasn't aware, how could you say I wasn't? Even. So awareness is there. Even if you put the term I'm unaware right on it, you couldn't say you were aware without it. So awareness is all there is, if you like it is, but it's not something you can describe. What description can you put on awareness? What description can you put on consciousness? The words or labels that we use, we know what they mean to us. But they are not something that you can say, this is consciousness, or this is awareness, this is happiness, this is sadness. All different patterns, vibrations, movements of energy, pattern, shape and form, expressing as everything. Everything from the minutest particle to the furthest and hugest galaxy. It's still only and ever the one. Separate yourself from it if you can. And yet, we've got this idea we are this separate entity, we are this individual, we are this person. Because you look around you, all you see is separation or appearing separation. And when you realise that all a tree is wood, then you might understand when they say you can't separate the wood from the trees. Can you? So everything is that one. And we've lost sight of that with the using of the words, and instead of investigating and see if it's true enough, we've continued to focus into the words and believe the words are the thing, and the seemingly division goes on more and more. And the further we go on and the more evolved we think we are, the bigger the division and the words come up, investing new concepts to fit it into. But look at it, go back and start from the fact you can't go back. You can't go back, you can't go forward. Time is a concept, everything is a mental concept. The word's never the thing, never was, never will be, never could be. When did your words begin for you? When the capacity of reasoning developed in these bodies, at about 2.5, somewhere around that age. Before that, have a look. Can you remember when you began? You say, I began at birth. We've taken that on and believed it. But can you remember your birth? Can you remember the moment you came into this existence? And even at birth, you can't remember it simply because you didn't have any words at birth. How could you have words then when the brain is just forming, the capacity of reasoning hasn't developed, the seeing and the hearing, the tasting, the touching, smelling, the feeling are happening. But we got no idea what's going on without the word. So just a natural, spontaneous functioning. Now look out there in nature today, as it is right now. There's a total appearance out there that cognising emptiness, what we call cognising emptiness, every pattern, every shape, every feeling, every emotion, every thought, every idea, every concept, everything is appearing in that. What do they call appearance? Appearance is a phenomenal manifestation. The definition of phenomena is that which appears to be. So it's appearing to be as it is. It's only seemingly what it actually is. It seems to be so. And we don't bother to question that. We go along with our schools, society, and our parents tell us, and what we start believing ourselves and reinforcing it. And that's what reveal what is being revealed. We take it to the continuity of that sense of separation. But look again. Let's try and separate yourself from this manifestation. See if you can. That's what we need to do, to investigate and have a look. Because they tell us in the ancient texts and scriptures that the false cannot stand up to investigation. So if you investigate, and if it's true, it'll be the fact that you can't get rid of. But if it's false, it must fall away. If you're not putting the idea or concept on that this is so, you see it as false, the false can never be the truth. Because like everything else in this manifestation, it's always vibrating in the interrelated opposites. And I say interrelated because they are the one. They are the actuality, but seemingly related, seemingly a dualistic emanation. Never was, never will be, never can be. Are you the body? I'll go over all these things again for the thing we've got going here. Are you the body? And you all know these things, I've put them out before. And innately you already know you're not the body because you say, my body. And when you say my house, my car, my coat, my hat, you know damn well you're not the coat, the car, the hat, or the house. You are not those things. They belong to this conceptual idea, or they are mine. We believe they are mine. So we believe this body is mine when we say my body. But whose body is it? Whose mind is it? Who is this me that you take as a body mind? Isn't it a label we put on me or mine? Put that word, me or mine, but what's me? Is there something there that you can say, this is me? This is what I am? The I amness, or the knowingness, I am it, the presence awareness, doesn't need a label. Does nature need a label to say it's daylight, or dark, or it's winter, it's summer, or it's warm or cold or anything at all? It doesn't know any labels at all. It's just functioning naturally and spontaneously. And you see, all that darkness is the absence of light, and all that light is the absence of darkness. And those two come about because the radiance of the sun, when the earth rolls, the part of the earth we're on rolls away from it, faces away from it, there's no light going to the other side of it, so it's darkness. When it rolls around and faces the sun, there's light. There's no darkness. So though they appear to be so, they are not so. You and I and everything, these so-called human beings, appear to be bodies with minds. And if you haven't got capacity of reasoning, you won't know you are a body or a mind. What did you know before you learnt words? Have a look at that. Or, as they say, what's wrong with right now if you don't think about it? Without a thought, what can you say? And what is thought? There's no such thing as thought, really, when you look at it. It's just a vibrating energy. It vibrates as words, sound. Sound is vibration is a sound. Sound is a pattern of energy. Energy vibrating. And there are myriads of different ways it can vibrate. The call of a bird, the voice of a human being, the sound of the waves crashing on the shore, the sound of the wind rustling the leaves. The wind's not making any sound, or the waves are not making any sound. That's what they do. They rattle against something or move something. What sound are you and I making? Sound of the breath even is very subtle until we breathe loudly. But all sound is, as I said before, is a vibration, a movement of energy. And what is energy? Being a vibration, isn't it an activity? If it was still, could it vibrate? Could there be any activity? Well, the cicada makes a beautiful song, beautiful throbbing of a song, just the rubbing of its wings together. make that. A musical note, pluck a guitar string or put it in, it makes a sound. And each sound has a different, what would you call it, frequency to it, or whatever you like to call it, what do we call a sound, to call a note. So everything is that. That is all there is. And in the seeming separation from it, the seeming division, the different concepts we put upon it, we form words, images, ideas, concepts, and take the sounds of the words, and the sensations, the feelings and the emotion to be real. They are real in a way, they are actually there. But they haven't got the reality we seem to put into them, into the differentiation of the words and the sounds we put on them. When were you ever away from that presence? What we call presence. Presence meaning pre-sense, before the senses come into it and give it the label, give it the sound of the feeling. And that pre-sense is knowing, it's hearing, it's seeing, it's tasting, touching, smelling. But we put that sensation, we put a label on it, as hearing, seeing, tasting. And to put the label on it, we've got to put a word on it, concept. Tells you in the Bible, in the beginning was the Word. This manifestation, though it was still patterning, shaping, forming and appearing, has never had any beginning. Can you find a static point anywhere, even if you believe in the Big Bang or whatever you like to call it? When did it begin? We try and put a time frame on it or a label of billions of light years. Oh. But don't you realise that anything that has a beginning must have an ending? So you can't say when it began, because none of us were around then. And you can't say it has an ending, because it seemingly began when the capacity of reasoning began in that pattern you call you. And it'll seemingly have an ending when that final breath, which is a spontaneous functioning, you don't intake it anymore, or the heart stops or something like that. So if you don't remember your beginning, you can't say you began. Do you think you'll remember your ending? And there's such a fear of this thing called death. But can you pinpoint a beginning on this manifestation, as I said before? We can say it's a billion light years. And can you recognise a minute? Oh, we're going to have global warming, and it's all going to end one day. The pattern, shape and form might break down like it does in the body and the insects and the birds and everything else. But does it think it'll be the end of the world? It might be the end of this pattern, shape and form as we know it. But it never began, it can never end. There's been light ages before, there's been ice ages, cold, global warming, all these things have been around. They've come, appeared, played around and disappeared, just in the seemingly continuity of the movement. But where does the sound come from? Doesn't it come from the silence? Where does the movement come from? Doesn't it come from the stillness, the emptiness? So when there is no energy vibrating in it, there is is still that silence and stillness. The formless, the emptiness from which forms emanate or appear from. The stillness, the silence from which sound comes from. And the capacity of cognizing or knowing develops in these so-called human patterns as it does in other patterns, but it's more developed in the human forms than what it is in the animals, birds and insects, viruses and whatever else that comes into appearance. It's certainly more developed, and it's certainly developing into, what do they call it? Evolution. It's certainly evolving into bigger and better and higher objects. But who to? Where's the reference point that it's being measured from? Like the little child, when the reasoning starts, certainly starts from a better vantage point than we did. It can work these iPhones and things like that at a very young age, because that capacity of reasoning is developed in it, and it's moved along from one pattern to the other. And it's only much more real, much more easy to recognise these things. Yeah. So, going back to the body and the mind, you're not the body, nor are you the mind. You're not the patterns, shapes and forms. You know that very well. You're not the planet, you're not the stars, you're not the water, you're not the word, you're not the sound. You've got a body, seemingly body, which is pattern, shaped and forms, is seemingly solid. It's formed out of the emptiness, and that's what the Buddha tells you, that emptiness is form. The form can't be anything other than the emptiness, so we take the form to be real. Emptiness, the form is nothing but the formless, appearing to be so, and that appears and breaks down, which we think is birth and death, beginning and ending. But always out of it, other forms appear and continue to appear. And there's still only the emptiness. The emptiness, the silence and the stillness is the basic screen. And we point out that the screen is never corrupted by anything that appears on it. You've got a movie with all the things going on the screen, and that is the screen. When the movie stops, is the screen ever torn apart or blown apart or got big holes in it from the movie and the violence that went on? That's not. It's not contaminated or corrupted by anything. And the essence that you are, there's a patterning screen is that basic screen. The basic screen, which the emptiness which formed us, the nama rupa is the name, and form, nama is the name. When that form you call you, the personal body, you gave it a name, or your parents gave it a name. And what do? We take the name to be what I am. And the form that came with that name is the pattern through which that life essence expresses. That's the one that's doing, the life essence is the one that's doing the thinking, the feeling, the labelling, putting the labels, the words, the concepts and ideas on it. And the body which is formed to express through. So everything is expressing through that. And are you the life? You know, you're not. Like Christ told you, I am the way, I am the truth, I am the life. He's not talking about himself. He's talking about how it expresses through that self, seeming self. It expresses, how do you know that you are? How can you tell me that you are? You've got to say, well, I am. That's the primary thought, the primary concept, the first one, I am. So it's that thought, I am, which is a word, a concept. And if you hadn't learned any words, would you have been able to say that? But the animals, insects and birds are not saying I am. They're not using any concepts. But the knowing that they are the pure intelligence, the activity of knowing, the intelligence energy. Knowing is an activity. Anyone who is not knowing right now. And you must realise, to express what I am, I've got to say I know, or I am. If you didn't have those words, you'd be like the cat or the dog or the bird or the insect. The knowing would be there, but you wouldn't have the conceptual label on it, which then acts from that conceptual image. So we act as human beings, yet the dog or the cat will act as a dog or a cat. Doesn't act as a human being. It acts as the natural pattern expresses up and put the label. But it's never moved away from its oneness. And so take your stance there. The I am, the knowing, I am a knowing is what I am. And that's what Moses realised on the mountain. These are tales in the Bible, and that's all they are, stories which try and express or point out what is the truth. And he's on the mountain, and he's got a lot of Jewish people to look after. And he was a Jew himself, and he was in charge of them. They were going in all directions and doing amongst themselves. They couldn't live peaceably together. So he, trying to find the answer, we went up on the mountain and started contemplating, well, what am I going to do about this? It's a big problem. And the intuitive voice, what they call the still small voice, the innate intelligence, if we're allowed to give it expression, will come up and find out. And it came to him and said, tell them I am sent you. And Moses realised there and then, well, it's that same sense of presence that expresses through this pattern as I am. So he realised I am that I am. And what do they call that? Yahweh or something, I am. Yeah. And each one of us knows that I am. So how can one I am tell another I am that I am? And that's what Moses realised. He says, I am that I am. What more needs to be known or understood or grasped? And that I am is ever fresh. It's ever new. It's not time-bound, because we got the concept of time and we don't realise it's a concept, because we think we began. And it tells you, in the beginning was the Word. And you realise you didn't have any beginning while you were in the womb for the first couple of years of your life. You were there, growing in the womb, and you were there for the first couple of years of your life. But you don't know it. Have a look back and tell me about it if you do. The livingness was there, but you hadn't any concepts to describe it. And there again, we look in the Word and say, as I pointed out before, the map's not the territory, the description's not the described. So what we're trying to describe can never be described in its accuracy and its truth. But it is truth. The knowing itself is truth. And they say know the truth, recognise the truth, realise the truth. And the truth will set you free. What are you free from? You can only be free from the belief. Myself. We're saying we believe there is a self. And they tell you in the scriptures there is a self. It's the one self that is self-shining. It's as the sun, the self-shining. It's ever fresh. It's self-knowing. It is the intelligence. It's self-aware. It's self-life, living. When we put myself on, what we've done, we've taken away from its absolute, its totality, and embedded it in this conceptual image we have about ourselves, this body-mind entity. This is myself. Myself. I am this self. No wonder we get into trouble. No wonder we're fearful, anxious and depressed. We've taken ourselves away from the absolute, put it into a conceptual image that has no power of itself, can't do anything, can't see, can't hear, can't be aware, can't choose, can't think. But we've taken it, been able to do these things. And no wonder we suffer, no wonder we're fearful, no wonder we're anxious, full of self-pity, resentment, anger, right? Because we've got this self we take to be a real personal self and try to gratify it, make everything, give it gratification, make it seemingly whole and complete. And it doesn't happen. And so when it doesn't happen, what's happened? What does happen? They're ignoring of it, and that's what they say. That's our problem, is ignorance. Not that we're dull or stupid, we ignore our true nature. We ignore that reality that we are, and we focus into the conceptual, minute little image. And in that ignorance, we suffer. Do you need to continue to do that? You do it. Why do you do it, and why do you continue? Because we've taken on the belief that it is so. And even in your dictionary, look up the word belief. It tells you that it's not so. The belief is not the actual. And the definition in the dictionary of belief is an unquestioned acceptance of something in the absence of reason. Now that capacity of reasoning is developed in us too, and it's a very useful capacity. And we've reasoned and questioned a lot of things out and worked well. But we've never questioned this belief we are, the belief that we are this entity has never been questioned until you start on the so-called spiritual search. Then you start maybe looking at it. If you're thinking we don't even do that, because then we started on the spiritual search, so-called spiritual search, we think there's this thing called God, which is the Word, is going to give it to us. He's going to grant it to us. Or if not God, he's offside of the Guru. He's going to do it for you. Or we're going to learn it from this word, or this book, or this scripture. Though the truth is in all of them. And it says in the scriptures, and take note, to those that have eyes to see and ears to hear. You've got the eyes and you've got the ears. What way are you utilising? Are you utilising them in trying to work this out? Or are you going to stay in the belief that I am this person, I am this separate entity, I am this individual, and if I do this and do that, I will become. Can you become? Can a being become something? Well, I don't think you have to be a Rhodes Scholar to work that out. Because it's just a matter of dropping the old beliefs and ideas and questioning and having a look. Have a look for yourself. Don't take it on what you hear. You need to do it yourself. Because you'll say, oh, I can point something at you. You say, oh, yes, I see that there's no me there. And you can mouth the words. But then something happens and you say, the me came back again. Now what bullshit are you telling me? If you see there's no me there and it came back. If something is not there, how can it come back? Can it? All it means is we've taken on the belief again and invested the energy in the belief, which is not the real. And if you're not going to take that belief on, not invest any energy into it, where are you going to leave you? It's going to leave you right here, right now, in this immediacy, without any label, without trying to describe it or giving it any description, just leaving it as it is. That's a word we've learned, is. What's it mean? Does it mean was, or will be, or maybe, or not? Or does it mean right in this actuality, right in this immediacy, it is? Is there anything that not is right in this moment? Point it out, grab it, if you can. But we take it to be, when we think we've lost it, this isness, or we lost this concept, and then you lose the concepts, of course you can, because the concept's not there. It came back, but the concept can come back. But the isness is always and ever with you. And it's always and ever fresh and new, non-conceptual, without the mental constructs on, ever fresh. Presence awareness. That's the description they put on it. Investigate that. If I'm not putting any concepts on what is right now, isn't it ever fresh? Can't. When did you say is beginning? You can't put a beginning on it. You can't put an end on it. So it's, it's not a static thing. It's a constantly ever fresh emanation. Fresh and new, beginningless, endless, meaning timeless, spaceless. Is there any space in it? Or is the isness is the space itself, before the space, in which the space, even the space appears. The isness is a pure knowing or being, non-conceptual, timeless, ever fresh, beginningless, endless, subtle, very, very subtle. And that pattern and form, this has been formed for that isness to express through. We take to be real. But when that pattern, shape and form breaks down, the life essence disappears out of it. What happens to the body? Doesn't it start to fall apart? What happens to the words? Can they express through an image, a dead image, a corpse? What happens to the feelings? Can they express through the corpse? So the body which is formed to express through, it can't express through it. But the natural expressing continues, continues in other seemingly pattern shapes and forms, without a pattern, shape and form to express through. It's still that pure, non-conceptual isness. Not was or will be. Ever fresh presence awareness or knowing. Ever fresh unknowing awareness. Anybody who is not knowing, that body that is expression through, is it still an empty right now, or is it knowing? Is it so-called awareing or knowing or being? Try and negate it right now. Say, I am not. I can say, I am not, I am not, I am not, but doesn't it prove in the very saying of it that I am? That I am, it's the life itself that's saying it. If life wasn't there, how many words or thoughts or concepts or ideas can a corpse have? It breaks down, and out of that breaking down, enzymes or microbes will form, get life out of it for a while. They won't last too long, and will go. The remains of it, ashes or dust, will go into earth again, and there might need to be a seed in there that needed sustenance, and with a bit of light and heat onto it, and what's in that microbes or whatever it is, that seed will sprout and more life will come. So out of that silence, that stillness, that cognising emptiness, the absolute, it vibrates continually into ever fresh and new life, essence or beingness. So what must you be? Are you this pattern we've taken to believe is me, that's got it, that understands, or it loses it? It can't do any of those things because it is. That's what isness is. Unaltered, unmodified, uncorrected. What's all thinking and feeling the motion? Isn't it altering, modifying and correcting? That's all it does. Dividing the indivisible. So from that, putting two and two together, you come up with 4 or 5 or whatever. But then you can say like Christ did, I am is the way. I am is the truth. I am is the life. Not that thought, but the sense of presence which enables that thought to happen. That thought that happens through the body. But it's all the one essence, pairing, patterning, shaping, everything. That's all it was. That's all it ever will be. And it's whatever and ever is right now. You are and I am, and everything is that. That is all there is. Innately, don't you know that? Because you look around the room and you see that's the chair, that's the carpet, that's the tree outside, that's the flower, that's Bill, that's Harry. And you realise that everything is that which we put the discriminating words on, the labels. Hair, chair, Bill, carpet, Harry, all labels. And the word again is not the real. The map is not the territory. The description is not the described. So without the description, sitting there right now, what can you say? Well, you can say a lot of things, but what are you going to say? You're going to say, I am not, or I am that absolute. And in the absolute, if there's all the nots and the no things and everything are contained in the absolute, what can you take away from absolute? Nothing. What can you add to it? Nothing. So that is what you must be if you're going to put a label on it. Must be that absolute. The great perfection is another way of putting it. And I tell you that in the scriptures also. The great perfection is non-conceptual awareness. Awareness without any labels or concepts. I think that'll do me for now.
Well done.
You're forcing me to shout louder.
Aww.
So tell us all about it. You should know it and realise it now.
Qigong works.
Yeah, the chi in him. So,
Yeah.
What?
Qigong works. You didn't whisper.
that was beautiful, thank you.
Sure, take it. What is it? I think it's the target, it says it, isn't it? It says, before all beginnings and after all endings, I am.
Mm.
Come on, say something.
There's not much to say really, is it? It's all just I am. There's no concepts, there's no lot of questions or anything. It just sort of is, isn't it? It's just
Verify it in yourself, that's all.
sorry.
Verify it in yourself
Mm.
and take your stance there.
Mm.
Take your stance where nobody can throw you off your perch. And we can all sit in this room and tell you, you are not. But you'll immediately know I am. But when you've got that belief, I'm not, oh yes, I haven't got it yet, I'm not. But know for certain that you are. And the majority of people out there will try and drag you off that perch. Who do you think you are?
I've had a bit of a development. I hope I'm not speaking too soon, but the what I call a chatterbox, the inner dialogue, the default mode network. I seem to be able to just shut it down very easily. The only thing is that, and I ran this actually by Paul. There's no real dividend to it. It's yes, I find that I get by. Like there was a sort of a thinking that goes on, but that you're not aware of it. In other words, there's a task network is functioning, but no annoying chatter. But there's no aliveness to it. It's still dead. And I said that to Paul, and he said that the mind state is capturing it. And that's deadening it. He said you need to be able to spot the heist where the mind is capturing that state. That's what he said was going on. So I don't know, but it's kind of nice, but it's not really any big deal at all. because of that, it's just as sort of dead as it was before. Yes, so I don't know. What does the doctor prescribe?
Well, you say the chatterbox, you see the chatterbox is there and you're able to shut it down, actually.
Yeah.
What's there before the chatterbox? You think it's dead, but is it?
Well, it's you could say that minus the chatterbox, that I'm just as miserable as I was before. So you know, there isn't much of a dividend there. It's kind of it's sort of nice. The chatterbox is annoying, but and it is interesting to see how everything goes on just as before, but it's sort of dead, really.
You want to grasp it with a concept, to see when they're giving it life. But isn't it life itself? Have a look what's going on. You're still breathing?
Yes, it's all happening.
Yeah.
It's all happening.
And
There is no pleasure.
Not really, no. No.
How do you know there's no pleasure? You're trying to grasp it with a concept.
Compare.
Yes, well, I mean, there's nothing happening really at all. Actually, it's just silent. But so what? You know, big deal. It's not. There's no bells ringing.
Yeah. You stay with it enough, and there's clarity enough, and then give it a chance to come up. But what are you trying to compare it with?
What about the traffic noise outside? There's no bells ringing, the wind noise? Is there any dividend in that? And for who?
I suppose it depends which tram. If it's what I'm waiting for.
Yeah, but isn't that the way it is? Some things, yeah, if it's the tram we're waiting for, yeah. And if it's not, there's no bells. There's no bells in the wind, and the birds singing.
Oh yeah, it's. Yeah, well, I mean, there's but they were before. I guess I'm hearing them better. Yes, there's no. It's fascinating in to the degree that how everything functions as before, without the annoyance of that jabber. That's just not there.
What is again?
What is?
What is? No preference, no partiality, no comparison.
Yes. Okay.
Unaltered, unmodified, uncorrected, just as it is. But immediately comparison is gone now. There's no happiness or no joy. There's no bells ringing. You've got a conceptual image of what you think it's going to be.
Yeah, I guess I have must have a concept there which I'm comparing it to. Though I'm not consciously comparing it, but still I must be doing so.
And there is a lot of confusion also. I've seen one of the talks, and I think you actually sent it to me, about a comparison of the amount of pleasure and fulfillment of satisfaction with people who have whatever psychedelic experiences and people who have intense sex life and people who are in abiding non-dual state. And those are rated the highest in the amount of pleasure and fulfillment. But pleasure and fulfillment are two different things. Because if you actually come back to that sense of incompleteness and sense of lacking and sense of wanting to add and fix yourself, that when that one is gone, by comparison you can call it ecstasy. But without the comparison, it's just the same state that planet is in planet doesn't experience. It goes around the sun and it doesn't experience bells ringing or anything, or the tree growing, or the cloud passing, or the cat lying in the sun. They call it natural state, or they call it ordinary awareness, because it's very natural and it's very ordinary. And because we have all those concepts, and I totally get it, because I was waiting for the big sort of ecstatic experience that will not only get rid of all the potential possible future suffering, but of any sort of displeasure at all. But as we were talking before the meeting starts, there is no one-ended stick. And even if you got rid, if we compare the society with the situation a couple of 100 years ago, when only about 30% of children would make it to adulthood because they would be, decimated by plagues, illnesses, and accidents. Suffering was relatively bigger. But if we compare the mental health situation today, it seems like it wasn't. Like, people were coping better with wars and loss of children and plagues because the level of suicide was much lower. So it is really so relative. The moment you get rid of most of your pains, the scale will start from the lowest to the highest, and that will be your extremes, new defined extremes anyway. So the pleasure is not the absence of or presence of pleasure is not really. It's not a tool to diagnose.
No, unless of course you've got the wrong end of the stick.
Yeah. Is that because you have the end of it? You don't have the whole of it. Because you are the space in which the stick appears with all its ends and all that comes with it. And the manifestation, as long as there is manifestation, it will be dualistic. It has to have both ends. You wouldn't experience pleasure if you didn't know the pain. And funny enough, people who experience extreme pains and who conquer the diseases, they are capable of more of a bliss than people who just never touch the ground. They kind of, so it seems.
Quickly, just this, nothing else.
Also, another aspect, see, there are such a subtleties. Like, I switch off the default network because subtly I believe that no thought is better than thought. So I force it. You didn't do it, of course life did it. But life did it through the vehicle of the idea of me. So that vehicle of what Paul told you, that there is still the mind state involved in even trying to suppress or trying to bypass all that mental chatter, there is still an idea involved there that's better for me. So there is still a me that wants something better. And that's perfectly normal, because every animal in nature wants good for themselves. They feed themselves, they clean themselves. It's beautiful. But to actually see that pattern as a tendency to still trying to get something for me and just smile at it. Oh yeah, okay, that pattern is there, but I'm not that pattern. I'm the awareness of the pattern. And then this...
Yes, of course I am.
Yeah. And the beauty of the learning that came out of it. I mean, I hope everyone will hear what you just said, that, whether the chatter is there or the chatter is not there, it doesn't really make that much of a difference in the level of miserability or whatever, I'm still kind of, pathetic, limited human being, not this, I don't want it the way it is. So it doesn't really matter. The freedom is freedom in it. Whether there is a chatter or there is silence, there is a freedom, there is a silence, there is a stillness that you are. And if that one is conscious, it experiences freedom. We were talking to a friend yesterday, whole half a night, who was actually very, very intellectual, very intelligent, can explain every little minutest detail of non-duality, and is logical, I want to teach it. Well, but can you actually see how indulging in that explanation and logic is still just a mental entertainment, is still just giving yourself a pleasure of rationalizing and defending and convincing? While I was trying to show her that, that stuff, that addiction can be going on, and a part of attention may still be resting in silence, aware of that mental noise.
Yes. So I guess when Paul said this is not a philosophy. This is not a path.
Yeah.
This is not a ladder.
No.
Yeah.
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 Mhm.
Yeah. Good.
Mm.
Mm.
And what's there when the concept of deadness doesn't exist?
Mm. Okay. Well, I'll keep taking the medicine.
Yeah. I think Paul's just saying that the concept of deadness is also chatter, but a quiet one that pops up. I mean, you probably notice when it does. But
Anyway, I'm very glad it's happened.
Yeah, it's a beautiful learning.
Yeah. Yeah.
I wouldn't dismiss it entirely. We get very dismissive. Oh, that's not it. It's just as much chatter as that's it. You know?
Yes. Yeah, spot on. Everything is that.
Yes, I guess it's one is both the space where the chatter happens and the space where the chatter doesn't happen.
Yeah.
Another puts it, he says, give up the process of the thinking principle.
Give up comparison.
The process
Process.
of the thinking principle.
Mm. Process of the thinking principle. I'll have to think about it.
Quick question.
You go for it.
I'll probably be using a few labels here. It feels like sometimes different people get put in your path, like at work or different environments, and it triggers a lot of stuff. Whatever you want to label it, whatever, insecurities, fears, self-doubts, whatever. Not that there's a person there to have the doubt, but that's
Sure.
the reactions happening.
Yeah, totally.
And that can sometimes be ongoing when you see that person a lot or you work with them or whatever. So I don't know if it's really a question, it's just a comment about what that
that's what
is,
happens.
and over time, I'm using time, but or whether that dissipates perhaps over time or something.
Yeah, you'll see.
I guess we'll see, but it's like, what's all that about?
But would you like that to dissipate? See the subtle preference here coming up. Like I would prefer not to have these reactions than to have these reactions. There is a subtle me again that has, and you can just notice that subtle me and smile at it because you are the space in which that preference happens.
And leave it as it is. It's going to change.
Okay.
And especially when you find that peace, that state in which there is certain intensity going on, people are shooting at me or they're humiliating me or they do whatever they do to me, bullying me, and then find the freedom in that. I see how intense it's that gonna be next time. I'm curious. I'm open. Like Jesus going on the cross, being crucified, and then. Theoretically, people were believing that he could stop it, but why would he object the Father's will? If that's how life wants to express, and that's what it wants to experience through this body, let it experience to the fullest with the curiosity. Like I remember Bob saying on Ross River fever that he had for 4 years, every day dragging himself out of bed or not at all, not being able to even get out of bed, and thinking, okay, see how long that one lasts. See how is that going to turn around? See how is this going to resolve itself? And he is having some sort of disturbances, pretty bad ones lately. And again, this is the attitude of holding space and seeing how life is going to play it out. And having no preferences, not trying to do anything about it. There was a humiliating comment on Facebook about him, which I deleted. He actually had a go with me. Why are you deleting it? Just leave it, well, it was too late, but I'll leave it next time.
What's humiliating when you're not thinking about it?
Yeah, it's just not necessary. It was irrelevant. It wasn't really about non-duality. It was some bullshit. It's probably his. I'm not gonna say anything.
Saying all that's perfect.
Yeah. It's me being overprotective. That's all. But the truth is, it's just a pattern, and I don't mind that pattern to be there either. But if you find that place in which you are okay with everything that is shot your way, pleasure, pain, happiness, sadness, and you don't have the preference and you don't wish it to go, that's where you're free. And when you even think of how many things throughout the history of that life expressing through patterns has been endured by people, then whatever is happening to you is actually a joke. You think of the coronavirus, or think of the epidemics that took place, or anything that anyone goes through. Like, life is so diverse, and is so, like, I like to take again Bob's life as an example, because he's been living over 90 years and he's been through everything, including the war, including the breakup of relationships, including the death of the spouse, including the sickness and weakness and threats and court cases, all of it. And just seeing that whole beautiful story, just the beautiful ride, it would not be as beautiful if it didn't have the down points. In the points of pain or suffering or fear, you actually relate to everyone who ever suffered. You open your heart for compassion. That's also something that is beautiful in a broader scheme of things. That's the way life plays out. And if not for that, you wouldn't know pleasure. And I hope it will resolve for you. I sincerely do. Whatever triggers you, I hope it will just, stop triggering, because, of course, nobody wish anyone anything difficult. I hope it's not too bad.
No, it feels like there's some growth. There's like not a payoff, but like there's some growth.
Yeah.
However you want to put that for me as well.
Taking it less and less on board.
Yes, it's like more of a surrender. Like, I know these are all terms and labels, but yeah, it's like to move through that is you've become more evolved, more powerful or something.
Yes, and it is less and less personal, because nothing is personal. People who do it to you, they don't even know you. Even you don't know you, less alone anyone else who is outside judging you or having a concept about you.
Talked about that years ago when the president, what was the first book, What's Wrong with Right Now, came out. A lot of comments on it, and one was, avoid him like the plague. I said, what are you going to do about that? I said, if they want to avoid me, it's their loss, it's not mine.
Actually, the leave it alone sort of comes up for me now as when you're not conceptualising it, you're actually getting more sensation noticed, more things going on in that one moment. So left alone, concepts left alone, it's actually more vibrant and felt. And it might be a sharp pain, or it might be whatever. It's more felt. To me, it seems an entirely good thing, good and bad side, but I'm enjoying it more. But that is because the concept's left aside. It's the resistances are less too. So even though it might be more felt, and it might not be the so-called nice feelings that people want, or the nice empty gaps they want, very quickly they're just sensations, and they're just overwhelmed of like, oh, that's too exciting or whatever, that's why I got ran away from before. Those feelings got ran away from, but yeah, more feltness seems awesome. Feels awesome.
Feltness, I like that.
And I think it's very. I don't know about anybody else, but let's see. I've had some, difficult times in life. I mean, when I went into hospital and had a hip operation and that sort of thing, but I wouldn't wipe that out of my experience for anything, Yeah. I mean, there was so much that happened then, and wow, this is life. This is what life gives you. It gives you all these wonderful different experiences, and we label them good and bad, but I mean the labels actually don't mean anything. They're part of the richness of this experience, you know?
Yeah. And even the labels change. Apparently, the psychology says that people who endure the biggest difficulties later on in life value them as the most precious experiences.
Yeah, sure.
Like even a childbirth and bringing up a child, which cost people, my gosh, what a time and effort and patience and money and all of it. And then later on they say, yeah, that's the most valuable role they ever had.
Yeah.
Or, yeah, any difficulties that in the moment you may judge them as uncomfortable, or you may even feel that God is speaking on you or whatever. But in a broader scheme of things, it's always nice to actually open everything up, just open that consciousness, include more, and then see the bigger picture.
Yeah. I mean, who hasn't said terrible things about their parents? and then sort of course, once you're grown up and an adult, you sort of see those as wonderful gifts.
Yes, yes, yeah.
I mean, even sort of.
Well,
I got my ears pulled and all sorts of things, but it didn't do me any harm at all.
I wouldn't say it's good or bad. Yeah, I got beaten up a lot, but it wasn't good or bad. Yeah, I'm not seen as gifts though.
Well, it may be who you are.
Well, it makes you who you are, darling. You know.
Yeah, but I mean that's not good or bad. It just is. It's just.
No,
yeah.
but it's.
It's just so undeniably could never have been any other way, and that's not bad or good in any way.
It could be appreciated. There is a potential for appreciation.
I guess because it didn't diss it in the first place. The other things that I, diss and then appreciate, like, so I diss having a checklist in life and, worrying about being comfortable later, and then when that goes, I appreciate it. But I suppose if something I never dissed in the first place, it's not good or bad, but not in an empty way,
Yeah, and ultimately you're right. Everything is neutral as it is.
Yeah, except the things you experience is not neutral until they are. Yeah.
Till they are
experienced that way. Yeah.
The intelligence energy is just creating every little second anyway, isn't it? It's creating coming together for every little.
It's all that. Look at that, I forget his name now, that's my bad memory. South African Prime Minister, 25 years in prison.
Mandela.
Yeah. Come out of that.
Yeah.
And then become a Prime Minister.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
It's amazing story.
But then he'll probably just see it as
Or a
natural.
bindo.
He just
Or a
see
bindo. Or a bindo.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
But then they'd probably just see it as their natural way. The natural way was to do a certain political thing on the planet. That was their thing, So they wouldn't even really see it as necessarily, I got to be Prime Minister, or, had to go to jail. It was like, I'm doing my thing. It's just normal.
What about Aurobindo?
Oh, well, Aurobindo, didn't he, he came from England after doing some university course or something. He started leading a revolution against the British influence, and he got thrown into jail and into solitary confinement, and that gave him sort of like, as it were, the understanding, and once he was released, he gave of that to so many people. Wonderful.
Yeah.
Still got a place going down in India somewhere, hasn't he?
Sorry, John?
He's still got a
Yeah.
big
There is
place.
the Matri Mandir, this big temple.
Yeah.
Oh,
around,
yeah.
Used to hide out in Pondicherry because that was French owned, so the British couldn't get him.
Oh, right. That's why I was there.
Yes, why? French probably thought it was Godot because he was making trouble for the British.
And it was neither, and he wasn't a doer.
Ah.
It's just life flowing through.
Yes, of course.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we were not supposed to do the streaming today because we don't have a full house and we don't want people to not come anymore. But we have 12 people watching, so and you've done exceptionally well. Beautiful. I could hear you from the end of the room.
Hey.
Were you tired after yesterday or something? Or
No, the voice is pretty
the voice is just low?
yeah.
Yeah, there are better days and worse days.
You were real quiet last Sunday, wasn't it?
Yes.
So I was trying to watch on the tube.
What's that?
I succeeded in watching the previous weeks.
Ah.
Mm.
I'm just drawn to live. Even on the tube, it has to be live. For some reason, just never do anything that's not live.
Yeah.
So stuff from the States live, or here live, in Melbourne live. Yeah, don't know why. It's just how it is. Could be energy, I don't know. It's just
Yeah.
been turning out that way.
Yeah, that's a good answer.
Live, just the three facets that seem to show up here is live, inquiry, and transmission for awakening. Awakening just seem to be the attraction.
Yeah, I like the way, and I was actually telling Julia's watching us too, telling her yesterday, you're good pointers, you know, because you have such a brilliant way of pointing it. Not justifying or not defending or not bringing logic, not rationalizing, just simply and plainly. That's what is. That's what I'm attracted to. Well, very often people need the story that justify, you know, I'm doing this because of that. I'm doing this because that is logical. That is, you know, like all sorts of intellectual overlay as support, almost as if they needed to convince themselves, as if there was important to have the, you know, they were defending in court. And finding that comfort in saying, yeah, well, I don't know. Yeah, I find myself here. Oh, I prefer life. I don't know why. You know, that's what it is. That's what. I don't need a story.
I think it might be because I'm not experiencing free will. So it's not meaning anything to me. So I see that I'm just showing here, I'm showing there, I'm showing wherever.
Yeah.
So that's why those stories are so obviously irrelevant to me. You know, they just would be something I'd have to create and add on, and it would just seem like such a farce.
Yeah, that is a brilliant way to explain it also.
It's like that because I'm just lucky to not have the free will happening.
Yeah, that is a brilliant consequence. It almost feels like you are explaining or justifying, but no, what you did, you actually gave a brilliant pointer in how that sort of a behavior is a natural consequence of really taking on board the fact that there is no free will. So now there is no me that needs to justify or explain why it finds itself here, because there really is no me. And if there was, they wouldn't have any free will anyway. So that's beautiful.
And I don't even need to do that argument. It's just like when I look, it just happened.
That's exactly right.
Yeah. So it's a sort of the diving in the middle. And what's there? Well, that happened. That happened. It's just not arising. Nothing else beyond that's arising about it.
Yeah.
That happened.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a blessing.
It is a big blessing, yes, a giant one. But then other things come out, like, because I get very triggered about being not understood, and so, because just about everybody has the free will to the bitter end.
I see.
And I don't. I'm the only person I've come across so far that doesn't in any of my conversations.
That's amazing.
Then it triggers the like, oh my God, they're not understanding me again. Like so many times I said I'm not experiencing the free will to someone who has an awake experience, so they would know what that's not like too. But then they keep overlaying that I must be on top, and I go, but they must understand that what it's like not to have that, you know. And yet then they've said, oh, I must be thinking that and doing that, and I'm like, didn't you hear me? And so that's my trigger, you know, this is the trigger. But I prefer it the way it is.
But it's an amazing thing to know and be aware of, because if you see and you convinced you have no free will, and there is still an assumption that somebody else does, that's a good thing to watch.
I don't think anyone's got free will. People assume I think I have it in various ways. So the triggers around, I know there's no free will, and I know that's the case everywhere. I assume that's not the experience for everyone, because everyone tells me that's not their experience. So I can sort of see what their experience are from all the different ways people describe it. Yeah, what I was saying is that people then assume I am experiencing free will.
I see.
And I get triggered by that misunderstanding trigger, the big trigger that I've got.
I see.
There's something fearful here, resistant about not being mutual in understanding.
Yeah, and that's also normal, because I never met anyone who would like to have unpleasant projections on them. I had people projecting all sorts of nasty shit that I had in themselves on me, and accusing me of different things because of the projection. It's never pleasant, and if you were not triggered, it's like ultimately the projection of a society that you are a witch will bring you to the stake and burn you a few hundred years ago. So the projections are triggering survival instinct, and it's natural and normal that you don't feel very happy if people project stuff on you that is just so far out. For me, actually, that type of a projection was a trigger to the point of devastation in which I found myself when I came to Bob, and he pointed out who is devastated really, because my ex-partner constantly could not see me. He was projecting stuff that was so completely incompatible with my own image of myself that it just created suffering. So this is actually healthy to not own the projection, but you could still be free in it, because when you know that they're just telling you about them, not about you, that all their projections have only to do with them.
Yeah, that's utterly understood. That still arises because I get so triggered. But I am lately, it is able to sit more with the feelings and the trigger in the moment, instead of just hiding in the bushes. So yeah, there's definitely more availability of sitting with it.
Yeah.
So what do? You just let it come
I watch
up
Korean dramas on Netflix, and then every time stuff comes up that triggers me, which is about people hiding love from love, closing down and running away. Whenever that happens, or submitting to aggression, letting the aggressor take over, I just notice I've jumped up from the couch and I sit. Oh, hang on, what's all this about? Maybe stop a bit, or there is a pause that takes place. I feel it a bit longer, and I may continue running off to do something else, or I may sit down again, and it's just a lot more staying with what does it feel, or just any feelings, any kind of, like when I was watching Paul, for example, on Wednesday, because he's his main thrust is about, relevant to a lot of people that come here, and is about looking at I don't know, what was it looking at right now, my brain doesn't even want to bring it up. What does he do? He talks about looking at what's not going on.
Yes.
Yeah, looking at the actual
from what
figures,
you are,
beliefs,
look at what you are not.
And for me, it's the opposite. So when he just maybe 2 or 3 times in each session, he mentions the one that works for me, which is the opposite of that, which is pre-thought. What have you got? What's there if you're not thinking about it? That's the one that works for me, and it just empties me out. And so the trigger was the same page trigger was coming up. Some again, it gets taken personally that the message is totally not the one for me, but probably it's for everyone else in the room. I accept that's fine, but this time I sat with it a bit more, and I felt sadness, about it, and a couple of other little feelings come up, which I probably got run from or got, backed off from. So yeah, I was just sort of feeling some of the feelings that went along with it. I was noticing a lot of the sensation. Normally notice a lot of that sensation that goes on when anyone's delivering an opposite message. It doesn't suit me in the room, whether it's Bob or any people here, delivering the messages that just aren't my one, and I'm like, people don't even see that one, and I'll notice sensations, and I'll notice the head's gone off to escape for a while thinking about something else. I notice stuff, but getting down to the feeling sad about it and those sort of things maybe were things that weren't really felt and noticed, a bit more vulnerable and stuff. So even in the middle of the foreign person coming in and it's a less familiar environment, and my being a good listener shit coming in, that was able to disappear a bit and just sit with the feeling sad from not being on the same page.
Wow. If I were you, I would be actually feeling happy because you see what
I'm
he's...
happy at the level of noticing that's going on, absolutely.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
But see, the thing, why is it not really resonating, what he is saying, is just because it's just too obvious for you. Bob has the same thing. He also says, look, from what you are at what you are not, and you know it. You know, he says you're not the body is the elements, you're not your thinking. Yeah, you discarding, you have already discarded that stuff. So that stuff does you nothing. So it's not really that you are not the same page as him. You are. You're not the same page as the rest of the room who maybe didn't really get it quite yet. So for me, it's a fantastic idea.
But then I get triggered by the other trigger. The message is not mine. So there's obviously some trauma or some stuff somewhere in the universe that is playing out here and being reacted to, whatever, There's a bunch of reactions. And it's more joyful as it gets more into the cold face, and the cold face doesn't hurt so much, and the cold face isn't so avoided.
And reactions are okay too. Is it okay to have reactions or no?
Well, so that's the sort of meta levels that go first. First, judging yourself for being a bad non-dualist. That sort of stuff went after a year or so. And then the meta levels of judging the stuff drop off earlier, I think. And then you get down to just feeling the nitty-gritty for longer. It stays there because you don't avoid it and then jump in on top of that. That wasn't a good thing to experience. I don't really have that. I don't want to experience it. I want to grow, Clearly launching myself into the difficult situations at that meta thought level. Because I see a lot of people going, but it's just a bit tough to feel that, or feel something nice if it's, well, that's not the point. Or at least that's not what's happening here anyway, so that's not the point of the story. It's just, a story based on what's happening anyway.
Yeah, and also assumptions that you know what happened in anyone else.
What's that?
Because you can never know, that you feel something less than someone else. You can never know that.
So that's where you're quite good at pointing out where interpreting what's going on for others when they use their language as well. You've got a great facility to see where people might be going parallel in terms of what's going on for them and how they're languaging. Which I don't kind of have that whole area. Yeah, you can only imagine. Like that.
You can only imagine what other people feel and then compare, and that's not it.
It's always going to be a bit wrong, isn't it?
Yes.
Extremely wrong.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes.